All right, everyone. You are all welcome to today's webinar titled Environmental Auditing, a comprehensive guide to ensure a safe and compliant business. So before we dive deeper into today's discussion, I'd like to introduce myself and introduce the company, Solutionstag. My name is Nyangoro Paul. I am a communication officer here at Solutionstag, Solutionstag Consulting Company Limited, which is a Tanzanian oil and gas service company serving the industry in Tanzania through technical services such as well services, asset integrity management, oil and gas data management, and HSE solutions, without forgetting training services. So Solutionstag Consulting Company Limited, because it offers HSE services to different clients, it understands the importance of people to be aware of environmental auditing, how to comply in their businesses on environmental issues. So, which is why it started this initiative of having monthly webinars on HSE. Since last year, we've been having these monthly sessions, and this year also, 2024, we are beginning with this webinar on environmental audit. With us from Solutionstag, we have Engineer Judith Macha. Can you just say hi? Who's going to be our today's presenter?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session.
Thank you, Ms. Judith. But we also have Ms. Rehema Raphael from Solutionstag. Can you also say hi?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. We also have Mr. Humphrey Kengia from Solutionstag, just to greet the attendees. Yeah, so without wasting much of time, we are very excited to have you join. And now is the right time to begin our webinar right away. So I would now like to welcome Engineer Judith Macha to begin the presentation. You're welcome.
Thank you, Nyangoro. I'd like to welcome you all once again to this session where we are going to learn, of course, some few things and some very important things concerning environmental auditing as a guide to ensure we have a safe and compliant business. And today we will be diving more into understanding what is environmental audit, and then the legal framework, specifically in Tanzania, of course, we will see it. And then planning and conducting environmental audit, the procedure behind it, and everything relating to environmental audit. And then we will see the compliance needs for environmental audit. And at the end, we'll see the role of environmental auditing in business risk mitigation, where we'll see what are those business risks. And then you will see how does environmental audit play a role to mitigate those business risks that might arise into our business at different times. So to start with, understanding environmental audits. Environmental audit, according to Environmental Audit Regulation of 2005, It's a systematic evaluation of activity and processes of a project. It can be a project, a workplace, equipment, to determine how far that these activities or these programs conform with the approved environmental management plan of that specific project and the environmental management practice, the best practice that's happening to the industry. And of course, the applicable standard, be it regulations, be some international standards relating to that specific project. So when I say we are looking at how these activity and programs conform with the approved environmental management plan, initially, before we start any project, we usually conduct environmental and social impact assessment, where we'll be trying to know and understand what kind of impacts can be arising from our projects. And from that, we usually prepare a management plan to see how we can mitigate or how we can manage those kind of risks or those kind of impact that has been noted. So coming to environmental audit, we then see if we have followed that plan that we have kept in place, and if that plan that we placed it initially, if it is still holds, if it still apply to our projects. So this process itself, or this procedure itself, it has to be systematic, it has to be documented, and of course it's periodic, because you have to do it some number of times. It's a certain interval, and then it has to be objective. You must have you must have some objective or the goals of conducting an environmental auditing. And if you have it, if you do it very well, you actually find yourself trying to see how does that activity or that process you are doing, that operation that you are doing, perform itself in conserving and preserving the environment. So just to sum up, it's a systematic examination of the environmental performance, process and procedure to ensure that we comply to applicable regulations and standard applying to that particular project or that specific workplace that you are working with. And some of the objectives of doing an environmental audit, of course, as per environmental management regulation in Tanzania, first, as I said, is to see if we conform to that prepared environmental and social management plan. But again, we are trying to identify the potential environmental risk. It can be during environmental impact assessment, we note the risk, and it can be we overlook that risk. So during the audit, we are trying to see or to identify any potential environmental risk that can arise or that arise from that specific projects. But again, it's also a framework where you get to learn from the experience, because there are a number of things, number of examination, number of studies that have been done, number of data that have been collected and analyzed during the audit. So from those number of data collected and analyzed, you will find yourself learning from the experience. If there are some areas where you had some effects into the environments, and of course, sometimes it can be into your own operation or from the society surrounding that, then you will get to learn, and from that you will get a chance to either to refine either a design of that project or the equipment, or even to refine the standard operating procedure to ensure that we mitigate those impact that has been noted, those potential impact that has been noted into our project or equipment or working environments. But it's also a framework for checking compliance. As I said, we have some regulation in place, some standard in place. So during the audit, we are trying to see if your activity or your programs conform or comply to whatever regulation that is in place or whatever standard that is in place. So you will be sure if you are complying, or and what percent have you complied, and what are you supposed to do to ensure that you comply and you remain compliant. And then it's also offer a a space to mitigate the measures. Because if you identify the impact, then you have to bring forward the mitigation measures, how to manage those risks, and you have to prepare a corrective action plans where you'll be having a time where you have to correct a certain impact. So you'll make sure that whatever mitigation measure that is in place is being implemented in due time. And with that one, you find you enhance the environmental performance of that specific industry, of that specific workplace. So it's also environmental audit. It's also play a very great role to ensure we have a sustainable business practice, and of course to uphold a corporate responsibility. If you find yourself working into the corporate world, and then environmental audit is a very good framework to ensure that we uphold corporate responsibility. And you might ask me, how does it do that? First, during the auditing, you identify the environmental impact. So you study the processes, you study the facilities, you assess the equipment to identify what are the potential environmental impacts. You pinpoint important areas of concern. So with this one, you find yourself, you understand your environmental footprint, and of course, take a proactive measures to minimize whatever negative impact that has been noted into your operations, whether it's to the natural resources, whether it's to the community, or whether it's to the assets of your company or organization. But as I said earlier, it's ensure, of course, you ensure compliance. So you have the assurance that you are compliant with this one, because you being verifying if you are there to whatever regulation that is in place. So if you are there to that, you find yourself, you mitigate those legal and regulatory risk, you prevent the fines, the penalty, and sometimes the reputational damage that can be associated with non-compliance to the regulation or to the standard that is in place. But also it's offer a room for resource optimization, because during this environmental audit, you'll be trying to understand, to evaluate the resource usage, the energy consumption, the waste generation. So if during this study and this assessment, if you identify that there are some areas that has an opportunity for improvement, or there's some areas where there are some inefficiencies, then with this audit can help you to implement a resource efficient practice, and of course even the technology that we are using to ensure that you enhance operational efficiency, and then you lower the cost of operating your business, and then you conserve the natural resources, and at the end you contribute to the long-term sustainability of your business. This is also a tool for risk management and resilience, because environmental audits contribute to risk management by identifying potential environmental risk, and of course that may impact your business operation. And of course, by assessing this risk, can be related to whether the pollution, the climate change, the regulatory change, then this audit can help you to develop a robust mitigation strategy, and of course even the contingency plan that you can work at your company or at your organization. And of course, if you proactively manage this environmental risk, you find yourself, you enhance business resilience, and of course you safeguard the continuity and the sustainability in the face of environmental challenge that can be faced in your organization. But during the audit, we encourage stakeholder engagement and transparency. So if you find yourself, you are in a position to engage stakeholders that in one way or another might affect your business, or can you please mute so that we can understand each other? Thank you. So as I proceed, I say that during environmental audit, we usually emphasize on encourage people to engage stakeholders, and of course to have transparency among stakeholders. So if you promote stakeholder engagement and transparency, you find you keep your organization into a very good and you enhance the reputation of your organization. So by openly communicating audit findings and sustainability initiative, organization and the company can build the trust and credibility with the stakeholders. This includes the customers, the investors, the employees, and even the community surrounding that organization or that specific project. And of course, sometimes you might find a good way to deal with the project, the impact arising from that specific project, because you will be allowing stakeholder views to strengthen the relationship between you and them, and of course to enhance the corporate reputation, and of course to mitigate the risk that might be happening at your working area or at your business. With this one, having all this in place, you find yourself you are in a position for continuous improvement and innovation. So each now and then you will be improving, whether it's your operation or you'll be improving whether it's your equipment, your operating procedures. So you find yourself that you are in a position to improve each now and then. And with that one, you find yourself you foster a culture of innovation, resilience, adaptation, and of course, you drive sustainable growth and competitiveness for your business. And this all together creates a long-term value for your business. So you find yourself, even when you are making decisions for your company, you are able to integrate environmental consideration or environmental management practice into the decision making, and of course contribute to the long-term value creation for your business, for your organization, and even for your projects that you are dealing with. So to continue with, there's a different type of environmental audit. It can be a compliance audit where you are trying to focus on adherence to environmental laws, regulation, and permits. And of course, sometimes we have a management system audit where we assess the effectiveness of an organization environmental management system. For example, if you are ISO 14001 certified, then you are trying to assess how your management system, how effective is your management system at your place. And sometimes we have an operational audit where we are trying to examine the specific environmental aspects of the business operation. It's going to be the energy consumption, the pollution prevention, the waste production and management strategies that you have. So saying this, you find yourself the scope and focus of each type of audit can be varied depending on the need of that specific organization or the objective of that specific organization. So one organization audit can differentiate to another depending on what the objective of conducting an environmental audit to that specific organization. As I mentioned, just to pinpoint the benefit of environmental audits, of course, to identify the potential environmental risk and liability, to enhance environmental performance, to demonstrate commitment and environmental stewardship and corporate responsibility, but also to improve regulatory compliance and avoiding fines and penalties to our business and our operations. And of course, to save costs through resource optimization and waste reduction, because we'll be identify the efficiency gaps in your business or in your operation. And then after identify those gaps in your operations, we'll be implementing some energy efficiency measures, because we'll be developing the measures to save or to optimize the energy, being it's the energy use pattern, the equipment performance, the building systems. So we'll be finding the measures or the ways to improve our performance. And then you find yourself, you are in a position to optimize water management, because you will be assessing from utilization, from the source of water used into that project, the utilization, the opportunity for conservation and cost reduction. So you find yourself, you implement water saving technologies. You can use water saving technologies, and with that you find yourself the cost that you are using to pay water bills, wastewater treatment is being reduced. So you are in a position to cut some costs into your business. But again, you'll be checking on the raw materials that you have been using and the waste that have been produced. So you've been finding if there's any opportunity whether to maximize production or to optimize production so that we can have we can minimize the waste production, and of course, or we can minimize or we can reduce the raw material use while maximizing the production and productivity. So you find there are some costs that you can cut down during this assessment. But again, you will be seeing the supply chain from where you source your raw materials, the means of transportation, the packaging material and everything. So you find yourself streamlining those supply chain process. And of course, during the process, you might find yourself you are in a position to cut some issues that are not very important, or if there was some area that you were overlooking, or if there's some area where you can improve the efficiency, you can reduce the emissions, or you can minimize waste. And of course, this process itself can lead to reduction. Of course, you can find yourself when you're in position to cut off some costs that can reduce or you can save for your business. And of course, with this one, if you are looking into compliance or you are looking to adhere to regulatory need, then you find yourself for those fines and penalties are no longer with you. So you can save the cost or you can reduce the compliance cost into that level. So to check into the legal framework, in Tanzania, we have Environmental Management Act of 2004, and then we also have a number of regulations pertaining to this Environmental Management Act that require any operation or any project to perform an environmental audit, and of course to use a registered environmental auditor to carry out the process. Where you start with, if the project has not yet started, at the initial stage, you perform the environmental impact assessment, and when it is operating, you perform the environmental auditing to see if you have undertake whatever measure that is required to prevent undesirable effects that can be generated from your operations. So we have the Act, we have a number of regulations, we have the standards, number of standards. For example, we have ISO 14001, that is the standard for environmental management that can be used for environmental management or carrying out environmental process and operation at your area. So to dig deep into the process of conducting the environmental audits, I'd like to take much time with this, and I will wish every one of us to understand from the planning and conducting an environmental audit, what is required, what are the pre-preparation process, what is required in that, and how you can go about it. So we have a number of steps, a number of preparation during planning for environmental auditing, and of course, when we are conducting an environmental audit, where we start with the pre-audit preparation. So during pre-audit preparation, we'll be establishing what are the objectives and what are the scope of our audits. What do we really need to achieve? Be it a compliance audit, being it a managerial audit, be it an operation audit. So we'll be establishing what are the scope, what is our really goal for conducting this audit. And then after understanding the objective and the scope, we go down to identify the audit team members. Who will be included in this audit, and what are the roles of each one of them. So for a registered environmental audit, we'll understand what is his roles into this audit. If we are planning to engage a number of stakeholders, then you will pinpoint to stakeholder who is supposed to be included in this specific project. And of course, you will be touching each and everyone that might be affected during the process. So you will also have to develop an audit plan and of course the schedule for conducting an environmental audit. And of course, you will have to review some preliminary data if there's any data relating to environment, any documentation relating to environment in society with that specific projects. You'll have to review them, of course, a preliminary review, so that you can develop realistic objective and scope, and of course know who you are supposed to touch and the affected group for your project that you can include during stakeholders engagement. So I like to emphasize on setting a realistic and achievable audit objective that might align or that can align or that align with the organization goals and regulatory requirements. When you are planning to carry out an environmental audit process, it's very important you make sure you have the objective that is achievable and of course that is realistic. It has to align with the objective, the organization goals, and of course the regulatory requirements. So you have to check at your scope, at your project, specific project, and of course at the country or your locality to see what are the regulatory need in that specific project or in that specific country or that specific region, and then make sure that the objective you are setting, it has to align in that for it to be effective. But again, I would like to encourage each one of us, being it you are an expert, environmental expert, I'd like to encourage us to engage the stakeholders. If you pinpoint there are some stakeholders that you wish to engage or you need to engage during your environmental audits, it's very important to engage them at an early process, at an early audit plan, because you in that process you are able to gain their support and cooperation. And of course, sometimes they might give up their views in how you are supposed to do it, what to touch and what to not touch into your environmental audit process. But also, it is very important that you ensure there is a clear communication and coordination among the audit team members and the stakeholders, including the client itself or the organization that need environmental audits, the team that is performing environmental audits, and the stakeholders that are engaged during that process or that must be affected in one way or another during that process. It's very important that you ensure there is a clear communication among these people for the audit process to be smooth and efficiently. And then, of course, the second process is during the data collection and information gathering. So after the pre-audit preparation, of course, from the pre-audit, you'll have the number of checklists prepared to carry out that environmental audit. You will have a number of data that you will you will need to take. You'll have to understand the regulatory requirements and how are you going to include them. Speaking of air quality standards, speaking of water discharge limits, hazardous waste management, and stuff like that. You will have all those data noted down in your checklist and how are you going to go about them. And then you will have to go, the next stage is to go and collect those data and of course to gather those information necessary for your auditing or for your study. So with this one, you will have there are a number of strategies where you can use to gather those information. Just to mention them, you'll have to review the existing documentation, whether it's the plans, the permits available, any other documentation reports available for that specific project. And then you'll have to conduct an interview with the key personnel. Speaking of the stakeholders that you are planning to engage, then you have a number of interviews with them, and then you have to go site to gather information, to observe, see it for yourself. And then you will have to analyze the environmental monitoring data and record this during data collection. And then it is very important that you ensure the data that you have gathered, they are accurate, they are complete, and they are reliable. So just to mention a tip of them, you need to verify the information, of course, from through multiple source, be it stakeholder that you have been engaged. There are a number of sources that you can gather those data. You need to verify them and make sure that they are accurate, they are complete, and they are reliable. And then you will have to cross-reference data with the regulatory requirements. What does the regulatory need? What is the industry standard? And then you will have to reference them. And then it's very important to attend to site. You visit the site where you will be validating the data through on-site inspection and interviews with the key personnel involved from the project. Most of times, we usually forget to involve those operators of that project. It is very important to involve them to know what are their key concerns that they have been facing into that particular project. So you'll have a number of interviews, starting with the operator, the managerial, or the admin of that specific project, and then going to the whole stakeholder team or the whole stakeholder chain or the whole supply chains of that specific project. So during this process, it is very important that you maintain documentation and records throughout the process. It's very important to ensure that whatever findings that you find are being documented and being recorded. And it's very important to pay attention to each and every detail that you gather during this process of data collection. It's very important. Pay attention to detail, even if how small they are, how small they are. You need to make sure you pay attention to it and you verify that data to ensure its integrity and credibility of that data, so that you can have the good or the best report and the best recommendation for that particular project. And then followed by documentation and reports. At the end of audit start, you'll have to prepare an audit report. So an audit report, it basically serves as a tool for driving continuous improvement and, of course, to enhance environmental performance within organizations. Because in this report, you will have the gaps, you have the audit findings, the observation, the recommendation, and it's very important to ensure that the recommendation that you give are clear and conscious and comprehensive. That's if someone need to read them, they'll find the details enough to drive improvements at their workplace. And of course, when you are writing, it's very important you prioritize and communicate the audit finding based on their significance, of course, their urgency and their potential impact on the environmental performance. And it is very important to develop an actionable recommendations and follow-up plans to address the identified deficiencies and improve the environmental management practice. So this report, if you have a well-documented report, it serves as a means to communicate with the management and, of course, with the regulatory authorities and any other stakeholders engaging into that project. And, of course, during this report demonstrates a commitment to environmental stewardship and compliance. So the person who is preparing an environmental audit, it is very, very important to take a note of this. Make sure you have your information are clear, conscious, and comprehensive. That can give a way forward to that specific impact and that specific recommendation. And then after you have an audit report where you have a number of recommendations, a way forward to take from that specific project, it's very important to set or you prepare for continuous improvement and follow-up. So it's very important to you prepare the corrective action plans from the recommendation that have been put forward, and you make sure you integrate the findings of that environmental audit into the organization decision-making process and the management. It's very important to integrate those findings into the decision-making process to make sure you achieve the long-term sustainability for your organization. And of course, and it has to serve as a catalyst for organization learning and improvement rather than just regulatory requirements for our organization. Because of my time, please allow me to finish the slides. Then I will allow for the questions. Just some few slides remained. So the principle is compliance with regulation, documentation and record keeping, systematic and methodological process, continuous improvement, stakeholder engagement, and of course, integration with the management system. Whatever you find into your environmental audits, whatever findings and observation, it's very important to integrate it with the management system so that you can provide a room for continuous improvement and learn from that experience that you have been noted. And the last section is on environmental audit compliance need. As I mentioned, there are some legal requirements where you are required to perform an environmental audit. And speaking of compliance, you are speaking of adherence to environmental laws, regulations, and the guidelines for sustainable practice. And the importance of adhering to these laws, regulation, and the standard that you mitigate the risk, legal obligation, sustainability, and long-term viability of your projects. You gain the competitive advantage of your project or your business, and then you create a better reputation because you'll be engendering trust to your customers and stakeholders, and then you improve the morale of your employees and the productivity, and then you elevate the culture, the organization culture, while improving the productivity that we all work for. We all know that whatever we are doing in our business, the goal is to make profit, and of course you need to improve productivity to make profit. So it's very important to maintain a safe and compliant business so that we can increase productivity at your business. So there are a number of non-compliance that have been noted during environmental audits. Just to mention some of them, sometimes you find there is a failure to meet regulatory requirements. Probably there is an exceedance in your emission limits, improper waste management. And sometimes this, of course, has been the major problem, major non-compliance in many business. It's a lack of documentation and record keeping. You find an organization have a practice, a number of procedures, a number of process that they are doing in relation to conserving and preserving environments, but none of them has been documented. None of them has been recorded down. So this is one of the major problems that we have found into many of the projects and many of the business. And sometimes we have everything in place, but there is no implementation of those plans and practice that have been kept forward into that. So after identifying the area of non-compliance, the specific area of non-compliance, it's very important to perform a root cause analysis to understand what's the underlying factor, what is the real cause or contribution to that non-compliance into your business. And then after understanding that, it's very important to set corrective action and remediation into that. So you set a clear objective and priority, you identify appropriate corrective measure and intervention, you assign responsibility, and of course the deadline for implementation of that. And of course, you establish a mechanism to monitor and to track the progress of those corrective action or those remediation that have been put in place. And then you have a timely and effective remediation to mitigate the risk and prevent further environmental harm. And of course, I will advise to prioritize corrective action based on the potential impact on environment, compliance, and risk mitigation. Sometimes you find some corrective action are relating to the potential harm or significant harm. Very important to prioritize them depending on the impact it to bring to the environment and the social group. And of course, you set a time bound to make sure that you implement each and everything in order. And after that, it's very important to verify and validate that measure that you have put in place. So if you have put some measures in place, some corrective action in place, it's very important to follow up to see if they've been done. You review the documentation and records. You monitor the performance of the environmental performance and measurement for your projects. It's very important to document the verification any validation process and the activity that you have been doing to make sure that you comply and of course you maintain the sound environmental management practice for your business. And of course, you provide a room for continuous improvement after everything and identifying and addressing the non-compliance. It's very important to capture the lesson learned from that non-compliance. Whether it's an incident or accident, it's very important to capture that lesson. And of course, you develop a corrective action plan to inform for future audit process, because with this one, you'll be making an informative, informed decision making process. And from that, it's good if you share the best practice and the success stories with the organization, with the team members, so as to keep fostering the culture of continuous learning and improvements. Very important to integrate the lesson learned from non-compliance incidents into your organization policy. Some time to refine the policy to make sure you integrate those lessons learned, and of course to put in place the training program to make sure that we don't fall into the same mistake again. So up to that, I'll welcome if there is any question. I hope we have gathered a lot. We have understand a lot. I hope these 45 minutes can add something, or it has add something into whether it's your work area or it's your operation or your working methodology. I'll welcome if there is any question before I return the session back to Nyangoro.
Yes, Sheila, I've seen you raise a hand. Please, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Judith, for such comprehensive and insightful presentation. Indeed, I've learned a lot. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to more of these webinars. I think I have no question. It's just a comment. Is there a generic template for the preparation of this HSE report, audit report? Or maybe if you have a sample, you can share with us so we get more insights out of it.
Sure. Of course, there are a lot of things that you can include into this environmental audit. Of course, there are some number of templates that you can be using. Maybe just I can mention some few things when you are preparing an audit checklist. Some few things that you can include, and it has to depend on the industry you're working with. So basically, we have regulatory compliance. So when you have in your checklist, environmental auditing checklist, you have the regulatory compliance where you'll be checking, depending on that specific process, what are the regulatory that you're supposed to have, and then you note them down. When you are going for audits, then you will be seeing if each and every of it has been noted. And then the second thing, we usually have the pollution prevention measures. So starting with the source of pollutions and how do we manage them, and the quantity of pollutions, you note each and everything depending on your working environment. And then the waste management practices, starting from the source of waste, being it a solid, liquid, hazardous, electrical, electronics, depending on your working area. So you note from the source of those waste, the quantity produced, the management practice of that specific waste, and then you check if they comply to what is required into that environmental regulatory need or standard need for that specific. And then it's very important to also note the emergency preparedness and response procedures for that specific project, depending on the emergency that can be happening to your area. So you note them down, and then you have the response. You check the emergency preparedness plan and the response procedures that you have for your specific area. And the other thing that we usually include in the checklist, it's environmental monitoring and data management. So starting from having the plan in place communication of that plan in place, monitoring of those plans in place, and how do we manage them, and how do we make sure that they are applicable, available, and they are implemented into our workplace. Those are some few things that we usually include into environmental audit checklist. I think I've answered some, Sheila.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sheila, for your good question, and thank you, Judith, for your explanation. I would like to welcome anyone for a question, a comment, or anything. You can just raise your hand, and then I'll give you an opportunity to air what you have. Anyone? Yeah, so I see that there's no anyone. So Miss Judith, you are welcome for conclusive remarks, because at exactly 4 o'clock we're going to close.
Sure. Thank you, Nyangoro. I would also like to take this time again to thank you all for coming together, for being ready to take an extra 45 minutes to gain a knowledge. Of course, being comprehensive. I hope it will add value to you.